In June of 1889, a man sat at a small barred window in southern France and painted the night sky. He had no freedom. He had no certainty. He had, by his own admission, no idea if he would ever be sane again. And yet, he created what many consider the most emotionally powerful painting in human history. This is not the story of a tortured genius who happened to make something beautiful. This is the story of a man who was falling apart and knew it and painted anyway. And when you understand what was actually happening to him in that room, you will never look at Starry Night the same way again. Let's go back to the beginning of 1889. Van Gogh is living in Arles, in the south of France. He's been there for about a year. He's painting furiously. Some of his most famous works come from this period: sunflowers, the yellow house, the bedroom. But something is breaking inside him. In December 1888, he has his infamous breakdown. He cuts off part of his own ear and delivers it to a woman at a local brothel. The details are still debated by historians, but what's not debated is what happened next. The community around him petitions to have him removed. His neighbors are scared of him. Even people who admired his work wanted him gone. And here's the part that surprises most people. Van Gogh himself agreed. He voluntarily committed himself to the Saint-Paul de Moselle Asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in May 1889. Nobody forced him. He walked in, handed over his belongings, and asked to be kept there. Think about that for a second. This man, who would become one of the most celebrated artists in history, chose to lock himself away because he genuinely believed he was a danger. To others, maybe, but mostly to himself. He was 36 years old. His room at the asylum was small: stone walls, a bed, a table, a window with iron bars. From that window, he could see a walled garden, and beyond it, rolling wheat fields and the Alpiles Mountains in the distance. During the day, he was allowed to paint in a studio they gave him on the ground floor. But at night, and this is crucial, he was locked in his room. He couldn't go outside to paint the night sky. So Starry Night, this painting that feels so immediate, so alive, so like he was standing under those stars, was painted almost entirely from memory and imagination. He combined what he could see from his window during the day with what he remembered of the night sky and what he felt. And what he felt in that room, in that asylum in 1889 was something very specific. He described it in a letter to his brother Theo. He wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he needed to paint the night sky because he wanted to express the terrible passions of humanity using the colors of the dark. Terrible passions. That's not the caption on the poster in a college dorm room. That's a man describing his own psychological state through the only language he had left. Now let's look at the painting itself. Because once you know the context, every single element reads differently. The swirling sky, those spiraling clouds of blue and gold are the first thing everyone notices. They feel beautiful. But Van Gogh scholars have noted that the movement in those brushstrokes, the intensity, the repetition, the almost violent energy, mirrors descriptions of his mental episodes. During his attacks, he describes sensations of swirling, overwhelming movement. He was painting what his mind felt like from the inside, the cypress tree. On the left side, there's a dark, flame-shaped cypress tree reaching up into the sky. In European tradition, cypress trees are associated with death and mourning. They're planted in cemeteries. Van Gogh used them repeatedly in this period. This one literally connects the earth to the swirling heavens above, a bridge between the living and something beyond, the village below. Look at the bottom of the painting. There's a quiet, sleeping village, lights in windows, a church steeple. Everything is calm, orderly, peaceful. It's everything Van Gogh was separated from. He's looking down at normal life, human warmth, community, belonging, from a place of isolation. He's not part of that village. He's watching it from the outside, the absent moon. Here's something most people miss. There is no true moon in Starry Night. What looks like the moon is actually a crescent with a solar halo. It's an astronomical impossibility. But Van Gogh wasn't painting what was there. He was painting what he needed to be there. A light source that was simultaneously the sun and the moon. Something that defied the rules of the natural world. Because in his mind, the rules of the natural world no longer applied. We know more about Van Gogh's inner life than almost any other artist in history because he wrote constantly to his brother Theo. Over 800 letters survive. And in the letters from his time at St. Paul, something remarkable happens. He writes about painting not as a creative act, but as a survival strategy. He says, in one letter, that work is the best thing he has to distract himself from his illness. He talks about painting with a kind of desperate urgency, like if he stops, something worse will take over. In another letter, written around the time of Starry Night, he expresses doubt about the painting itself. He calls it an exaggeration. He says the search for style has taken him away from truth. He almost dismissed his own masterpiece. That's what makes this so human and so devastating. He was in there, creating something that would hang in the Museum of Modern Art in New York and be seen by millions of people every year. And he thought it was a failure. He thought he was a failure. He died 14 months after painting Starry Night. He never knew what he had made. Van Gogh gave Starry Night to his brother Theo, not as a prized work, almost as a footnote. Theo stored it with other paintings. When Theo died just 6 months after Vincent, the stress of his brother's death is believed to have accelerated his own illness. Theo's wife, Jo van Gogh Bonger, inherited everything. Jo is one of the unsung heroes of this story. She spent years organizing Vincent's letters, promoting his work, and refusing to sell pieces to the wrong buyers. She understood what she had before the rest of the world did. Starry Night passed through several collections before arriving at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1941. A gift from a private collector named Lily P. Bliss. Today it's one of the most visited objects in any museum in the world. On busy days, crowds form around it 6 and 7 people deep. People cry in front of it regularly. Museum staff have reported it. A painting made by a man locked in an asylum who thought it was a failure, who never sold a single work in his lifetime, now makes strangers cry in a museum in New York. If that's not a story worth telling, I don't know what is. When we put famous paintings on posters and phone cases and coffee mugs, we flatten them. We turn them into decoration. We forget that a human being made them, usually at enormous personal cost. Van Gogh didn't paint Starry Night because he was a genius who wanted to create something beautiful. He painted it because he was suffering, and painting was the only way he knew how to stay alive. The swirling sky isn't just beautiful. It's a document of a mind in crisis, trying to find meaning in chaos. The village below isn't just picturesque. It's the world he was locked away from, seen through iron bars. The cypress tree isn't just compositional. It's a symbol of death, standing in the foreground of his own life, knowing this doesn't make the painting less beautiful, it makes it more human. And that, more than any technique or art movement or historical context, is why this painting still stops people in their tracks more than 130 years later. Because somewhere in those swirling brushstrokes is a man saying, I was here, I was suffering, and I made something anyway. That's the story behind Starry Night. And that's the kind of story this channel exists to tell. If this changed how you see Starry Night or made you want to look at it again, hit subscribe. Every week we go behind another famous painting and find the story that was hiding there. Next week, the painting Caravaggio made while he was a wanted murderer on the run. That one is something else. I'll see you there.